3 days, 50,000 lives lost. A small town transformed into a living cemetery for an entire nation. The Battle of Gettysburg was not just the bloodiest conflict on American soil. It was a pivotal turning point that shaped the fate of both North and South, of freedom and slavery, of ideals and bloodshed. Here, amidst the thunder of cannons shaking the earth and sky, America stood on the brink of collapse, and from that precipice found its path to rebirth. In 1863, the American Civil War entered its third year, with blood still flowing across the fields of both the North and South. The Confederate Army, under General Robert E. Lee, had secured a series of resounding victories in Virginia, severely dampening Union morale. Aiming to end the war with a decisive blow, Lee decided to invade the North, advancing into Pennsylvania. He believed that a significant victory on Northern soil would erode public support for the war in the Union, compelling President Lincoln's government to negotiate peace and potentially garner recognition from European powers. Meanwhile, President Abraham Lincoln faced immense political pressure as the prolonged war yielded no clear results. The Union Army was ordered to halt Lee's advance at all costs. In the small town of Gettysburg, where the two armies unexpectedly collided, the destiny of the United States was about to be rewritten in fire and blood. The course of the battle. 3 days of life and death. Day 1. On July 1st, 1863, the summer sun bathed the tranquil fields around Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Few could have anticipated that this crossroads of rural roads would become the epicenter of one of the most brutal and decisive battles in American history. There was no specific battle plan for Gettysburg, but a chance encounter, a patrol, a distant plume of dust, ignited the storm. Around 7 a.m., a Union cavalry unit under Brigadier General John Buford unexpectedly spotted advancing Confederate scouts. These were the vanguard of the Army of Northern Virginia, commanded by the renowned General Robert E. Lee, pushing deep into Pennsylvania with hopes of delivering a decisive blow to the North. Recognizing the strategic importance of the terrain around Gettysburg, Buford decided to hold his ground to delay the enemy until reinforcements could arrive. The battle escalated rapidly. Confederate forces deployed 2 divisions under Generals A.P. Hill and Richard Ewell, while Union reinforcements from the Army of the Potomac, including troops under General John Reynolds, who was killed while leading, joined the fray. Fierce clashes erupted around McPherson's Ridge, Oak Hill, and Seminary Ridge. Gunfire and artillery roared across the region, transforming Gettysburg from a peaceful town into a landscape of death. By afternoon, the Confederates, with superior numbers, gained the upper hand. Union forces were compelled to retreat from the town, leaving many fallen comrades along the streets. However, instead of disintegrating, they executed an organized withdrawal to higher ground south of town, particularly Cemetery Hill, Culp's Hill, and Cemetery Ridge, strategic elevations that would become crucial defensive positions in the days to come. Unintentionally, the Union had secured advantageous terrain, a vital factor in warfare. As night fell, both sides hastily brought in reinforcements. General George Meade, newly appointed just days prior, ordered the concentration of all Union forces at Gettysburg and established a robust defensive line. In the darkness, regiments marched silently, carrying the fate of a divided nation. The first day concluded with a temporary Confederate victory. Yet, within the rugged terrain, amidst cemeteries and rocky hills, a new battlefront had emerged. Gettysburg was no longer merely a town, it had become destiny. Day 2. At dawn on July 2, 1863, Gettysburg awoke amidst the remnants of the previous day's bloody encounter. Both armies rapidly repositioned and reinforced their lines. General George G. Meade, commanding the Union's Army of the Potomac, arrived at midnight and made a bold decision to hold the high ground south of Gettysburg, where his forces were forming a horseshoe-shaped defensive line stretching from Culp's Hill in the east, through Cemetery Hill, down Cemetery Ridge, and ending at Little Round Top and Big Round Top in the south. General Robert E. Lee, buoyed by the initial success, believed that attacking the Union flanks, perceived as weaker than the center, could break their defenses. He ordered General James Longstreet to assault the Union left, which was not yet fully fortified. However, delays and coordination issues postponed the attack by nearly 6 hours, not commencing until mid-afternoon. During this time, Union forces had strengthened their positions. When the assault began, blood was shed anew in areas like Devil's Den, the wheat field, the peach orchard, and notably Little Round Top, a strategic hill at the extreme southern end of the Union line. Losing this position would have compromised Meade's entire left flank, allowing Confederate forces to outflank the Union Army. At Little Round Top, the 20th Maine Regiment, led by Lieutenant Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, etched one of the most heroic chapters in American military history. Running low on ammunition and nearly encircled, Chamberlain ordered a bayonet charge, a daring counterattack that caught the Confederates off guard, forcing them to retreat. Holding this critical position helped save the Union's left flank. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, Confederate forces launched fierce attacks on Culp's Hill and Cemetery Hill, but met with staunch resistance. Combat continued into the night, amid dense forests and cemeteries where gunfire mingled with prayers. By the end of the second day, more blood had been spilled than at any previous point in the war. Despite heavy losses, the Union maintained its defensive line. General Meade realized he had thwarted Lee's most perilous assault. Yet, Lee was not deterred. In his mind, he was already planning one final gamble, a direct attack on the center of the Union line that would determine the campaign's outcome. Day 3. On the morning of July 3, 1863, General Robert E. Lee faced a critical and decisive decision during the Battle of Gettysburg. Despite 2 previous unsuccessful attempts to break through the Union defenses, Lee remained convinced that a decisive strike at the center would bring victory to the Confederate Army. It was a bold decision, and ultimately a fatal miscalculation. Lee ordered General George Pickett to lead nearly 15,000 Confederate soldiers in a direct charge across an open field nearly 1,000 yards wide, aiming straight at the center of the Union defenses on Cemetery Ridge. Before the assault began, Confederate artillery bombarded the Union lines for over 90 minutes in an effort to soften their defenses. However, much of the artillery fire overshot its targets, leaving the Union forces largely unscathed and still firmly entrenched. Around 3 p.m., Pickett's charge commenced. Long lines of gray-clad soldiers advanced across the wheat field under a hail of artillery shells and rifle fire. They marched in disciplined ranks, like a doomed procession walking into death. Nearly half of the attacking force was killed or wounded. A few soldiers managed to reach the Union lines, but were quickly repelled by fierce resistance. The assault ended in a disastrous defeat and is considered one of the most significant turning points of the American Civil War. It is said that after the battle, General Lee told Pickett, "Assemble your division if you have any men left." This was Lee's final gamble, and the end of the dream of victory on Northern soil. On July 4th, just 1 day after the defeat, Lee was forced to retreat, leading his wounded and weary army through relentless rain and despair. The Battle of Gettysburg had concluded with a crucial victory for the Union forces, but its repercussions would be felt long afterward. Pickett's charge was not only a military failure, but also a symbol of sacrifice and the harsh limits of courage when faced with the brutal reality of war. It marked a major turning point in the Civil War, severely weakening the Confederate Army's morale and combat capability, and paving the way for the eventual downfall of the Southern cause in the years to come. As the smoke cleared over Gettysburg's hills, the battlefield presented a haunting scene. Over 51,000 casualties, the highest of any battle on American soil. Wheat fields had turned into fields of corpses. Field hospitals overflowed with the wounded. Bodies were hastily buried or left exposed under the sweltering summer sun. Militarily, Gettysburg marked the first significant defeat for the Confederacy in the North. General Lee, previously undefeated, was forced to withdraw to Virginia. It was his last attempt to bring the war into Union territory. From this point, the tide turned. Union forces began to regain the initiative, pushing southward. Politically, Gettysburg revitalized President Abraham Lincoln's administration. Amid internal divisions in the North, this victory bolstered confidence in the goals of national unity and the abolition of slavery. It also diminished the Confederacies.